Right here is the modern Middle East. I'm going to do a real quick breakdown about what Iran's doing. Now, Iran is the Persians, not Arabs, Persians. Put the Arabs up in here. The Arabs and the Persians, they don't like each other. Persians are Shiite. The Arabs are normally Sunni. But the Persian Empire of old, that Greece fought, and then Alexander the Great fought. And they morphed into the Parthians, and the Romans fought. Now, first battle Rome lost, but the second one they won. Anyhow, I'm just trying to give you a brief history on Iran. They're a proud people. The young people like us. They like America. They like soft power. But what Iran's trying to do, the theocratic regime, is re-establish the Persian Empire V3. You go from here, Iran, through Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, where they have Hezbollah. See, the Quds Force of Iran, they're a military special operations branch, and they're responsible for anything military outside of Iran. That's why you got Quds Force over here supporting Hezbollah. Now, they've been fighting in Syria, all these guys, Iran, Turkey, Kurds. This Syria is the most complex battle space in the history of warfare right now. So many actors, so many layers, so many angles, so many connections. Now, Saudi Arabia is scared as shit of Iran. Now, Iraqis, to keep Iran in check, when Saddam Hussein was in power, they both feared each other. They fought a major war in the 80s. A lot of chemical weapons were used. And you know what? We helped Saddam Hussein do that, and then we hang him from a tree. But Iran right here, they already have a land bridge. Now, recently in Syria, let me zoom in, we took Al-Tanf. Al-Tanf is a border crossing right here. There's only 5. All along this border, there's only 5 border crossings. And keep in mind, this shit's all pure desert. And the border crossing highway that leads across Al-Tanf into Syria is a dirt fucking road. Just to let you know how remote these people are, we have a base right here, Al-Tanf. We have 200 commandos there. Well, that's what they call them, Special Forces, Green Berets, Delta Force, Rangers even. Rangers up here, helping out the Kurds. And when the Russian mercenaries, quote, attacked, they crossed across the Euphrates. We bombed the fuck out of them. But it was a show of force. It's because Mattis is taking care of the rules of engagement. So we threw up in a show of force against Russia because we have the SDF's back. That's a mostly Kurdish force. I respect the Kurds. Props up to the Kurds. Their empire that they're trying to build extends down through here. But anyway, the Kurds are good fighters. They're called the Peshmerga, those who face death. We put the Kurds together with the token force of Arabs. It's called the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces. See the Euphrates River right here? Remember a couple months ago, you may have heard? Some Russian mercenaries crossed this shit. Because we control with the SDF all the east of the Euphrates and even some of the west. The Russians had about a battalion and they crossed through. They had heavy tanks, they had artillery batteries, and they had mortars too. Now we threw up. Now we only needed one air asset to take care of this shit. Battalion ain't too big. It was coming after an outpost. And we had some special operations forces there. I don't know how many. Dozens. They're spread out throughout the East Syria. But Russia was testing our resolve, so we threw up. Now keep in mind, now listen to this list. B-50, and keep in mind the plural. Although various sources vary regarding the plural, they do not vary regarding the assets used. They crossed over and they began the attack against the outpost where the SDF is. Syrian Democratic Forces, the Kurds. We got their back, and they got ours too. They launched an attack against our shit to see our resolve. Moscow's trying to see what they can get away with. Shit up here. And Moscow's trying to see what they can get away with, because if you don't know, Russia's heavily deep in Syria. They have won this war for Assad. But I'm going to try to show you about this battle. Now keep in mind these air assets that were used. So they crossed the Euphrates and they began their attack. And by the way, in their attack, no one was killed. There was one Kurd that was wounded. Meanwhile, we killed 250 Russians and wounded 200 more. You can check the sources on that. They're recovering in St. Petersburg and Moscow and Leningrad. Or what used to be Leningrad, and St. Petersburg and Stalingrad. No longer called that, I don't believe, because they erased Stalin from their map. we sent up B-52s. Those are our traditional historic heavy strategic bombers. They can hold 40 1,000-pound bombs. We use those to do arc light strikes in Vietnam. 3 of them up in the air, and they all drop 40 1,000-pound bombs over a box, 2-3 miles by 2 or 3 miles. We sent up B-52s. We send up Reaper drones armed with missiles. We sent up F-15Es. We sent up Apache attack helicopters. And we even set up an AC-130 gunship. Now, any of you who play Call of Duty, you know what that shit is. Look it up. Google it. AC-130 gunship. And I think there may have even been the A-10 Warthog used. Google that shit, the Warthog. It's a tank buster. It strafes. It uses a 30-millimeter cannon. You know how much that shit shoots? Those 30-millimeter shells? They're about a foot long. And they shoot 50 per second. Like a minigun, a Dillon minigun. So anyhow, we beat the fuck out of them. As soon as they crossed back west of the Euphrates, we stopped. We haven't heard anything from them since. But regarding Al-Tanf, like I was saying before, we stopped Iran's little land bridge that they were trying to make. It's still a threat. Israel's been bombing the fuck out of Iran up in Syria. But ideally, what Iran is looking for is right here. Iran, the Iranian Empire, the Persian Empire V3, all this shit right here. You got Putin backing Iran. Oh, and by the way, in Iraq, we have over 6,000 troops. In Syria, we have a publicly declared 2,500 troops, including artillery batteries off an MEU, based on an aircraft battle strike group right here. And don't forget our strike groups over here. A lot of submarines. We got to catch up. And Turkey's involved, Jordan's involved, everyone's involved. But Al-Tanf right here, this land bridge, if they try to cross with some force to bring weapons to Hezbollah, which is down here, and they're crossing Iraq, they're like, what the fuck? Because they don't want to try us. This is a tripwire force. They know that if they kill Americans, that our public back home will be like, what the fuck? We already don't like Iran. So we go after their shit. And I don't know if you know, but in the 1980s, we had a brief skirmish with Iran in the late 80s. We destroyed 80% of their navy. And we fucked up some oil platforms that they had in the Persian Gulf. And that's another mine. We got a fleet in Bahrain. All these air assets, we got one big one in Turkey. But they look like they're flipping sides. Going toward Russia buying the S-400. So we got Iran. We got a bunch of fucking troops in Iraq scattered around. Mostly special ops. Same thing in Syria, scattered around the east. And Jordan's our buddy. And Israel's a beast. They're fucking shit up. Doing hundreds of airstrikes over the past 5-6 years. However long it's been. Over 500,000 dead in Syria. Mostly civilians. Russia's fucking brutal. But when we took Raqqa, we leveled that city. You didn't hear too much about that in the news, huh? That was when Mattis first got brought up. They loosened the rules of engagement. Before, if we had a jet flying a sortie over here looking for things to shoot, let's say we saw an ISIS column